Is Al-Khidr still alive among us today? This question has occupied minds for hundreds of years and continues to spark debate.
Why?
Because Al-Khidr was no ordinary man, and his story is one of the most astonishing narratives in the Holy Quran. Musa, Moses, peace be upon him, and I want you to truly grasp the weight of this name. He is the one who spoke directly with Allah, the receiver of the Torah, which was sent down as a guidance for the children of Israel. Musa is one of the 5 Ulu al-Azm, the prophets of steadfastness, the greatest prophets in human history. Yet, this great prophet, with all his high status, traveled a long journey just to learn from Al-Khidr. A prophet from the highest rank of messengers leaves his people and walks for days just to sit before a man and learn. Why did he do that? Because Allah said something amazing to Musa. "O Musa, I have a servant at the junction of the 2 seas who is more knowledgeable than you. Welcome to my little world. I am Dodi, and from the bottom of my heart, welcome to the Dodi Drama family." Join our big family right now. Subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and let's take our together into this enchanting world. The beginning of the mystery. Allah says to a prophet, "There is a man who knows what you do not know." Who is this man? And what kind of knowledge does he possess? That is what we will discover tonight. An important note, his correct name is Al-Khidr, not Al-Qadr, as some people mistakenly say. Tonight, we will walk with Musa on his journey to find Al-Khidr. Then, we will witness 3 strange, unbelievable events, 3 actions that defy all logic, actions that seem evil or insane. But behind each act lies a profound wisdom that will leave you astonished, a wisdom we fail to see simply because we cannot perceive the unseen. The first event, Al-Khidr boards a ship with Musa, a ship belonging to poor, needy people who gave them a free ride out of pure kindness. Then, Al-Khidr breaks a plank of the ship, causing water to rush in. The second event, Al-Khidr walks with Musa along the shore and sees a young boy playing with his friends. He walks up to him, grabs his head, and kills him. An innocent child killed right before Musa's eyes for no apparent reason. The third event, Al-Khidr enters a village with Musa and asks for food. The villagers refuse. They are greedy people who reject the sacred duty of hospitality. As they leave hungry, Al-Khidr sees a wall on the verge of collapsing, and he rebuilds it for free for the very people who refuse to feed them. At the end of this journey, we will answer the big question. Is Al-Khidr alive today? What is the story of the fountain of life that people claim he drank from? What is Tul-Karnain's connection to this fountain? And why do some people claim they have seen Al-Khidr? Imam al-Bukhari, the author of the most authentic book after the Quran, stated that Al-Khidr died. However, other great scholars argued the exact opposite, claiming he remains alive and provided for until the Day of Judgment. Tonight, we will answer this question using evidence from the Quran, the Sunnah, and the sayings of the scholars. All of this tonight. But before we begin, if you like our content even just a little bit, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, leave a like, share the video with your friends, and tell me in the comments, which country are you listening from, and what time is it right now? If you're listening to us early in the morning, go make yourself a hot cup of coffee, and woe to you if you ruin it by adding sugar. But if you're listening at night before bed, don't get too excited. Just relax, close your eyes, and go to sleep. Come on, let's begin the journey. Who is Al-Khidr? Al-Khidr is a strange name, unlike ordinary names. Scholars disagreed on his real name, but everyone knows him only by this title. The question is, why was he called Al-Khidr, the Green One? Where did this name come from? The answer is in Sahih al-Bukhari. The Messenger of Allah, peace be upon him, said, "He was named Al-Khidr because he sat on a barren white land, and it turned green, lushly vibrating with life behind him." Imagine the scene: a man walking through a barren desert, a white, dry land with no vegetation and no life. He sits on this dead earth, and suddenly, the ground begins to move and vibrate beneath him. Grass sprouts, plants appear, and the earth turns completely green, all because he sat on it. This is why he was named Al-Khidr. The earth turns green wherever he sits. A man blessed by Allah with life and a miraculous touch given to no one else. Now, let's see how Allah described this man in Surah Al-Kahf, verse 65. Allah Almighty says, "And they found a servant from among our servants to whom we had given mercy from us and had taught him from us a certain knowledge." 4 magnificent descriptions in a single verse. 1. A servant from among our servants, Allah attributes servitude to him, which is the highest honor. 2. To whom we had given mercy from us, a special mercy directly from Allah. 3. And had taught him, Allah himself taught him, with no human teacher or book involved. 4. From us a certain knowledge, direct, divine knowledge. Scholars call this Al-Ilm Al-Ladunni, inspired/divine knowledge. Knowledge of the hidden wisdom behind events, things that ordinary people cannot see. We will understand this knowledge better when we witness Al-Khidr's 3 actions and their explanations. The reason for the journey. The story began with a simple situation that changed everything. Musa, peace be upon him, was delivering a sermon to the children of Israel, teaching and reminding them. He was at the peak of his status, a prophet to whom the Torah was revealed, supported by grand miracles. A man from the congregation stood up and asked him a question. "O Prophet of Allah, who is the most knowledgeable person on earth?" A simple question, but the answer would change the course of events. Musa, peace be upon him, looked at the questioner and said, "I am." He did not say Allah knows best, nor did he attribute the ultimate knowledge to his Lord. He simply said, "I am the most knowledgeable person on earth." He was speaking based on what he knew, as he was the prophet of Allah and the one who spoke to the most merciful. But Allah wanted to teach him a lesson in humility. Allah inspired him, saying, "O Musa, I have a servant at the junction of the 2 seas who is more knowledgeable than you." Clear, direct words. There is someone more knowledgeable than you? "O Musa." What was Musa's response? Did he get angry? Was he arrogant? Did he object? No. He did something that proved his true greatness. He immediately said, "O Lord, how can I find him?" He wanted to go to him, to learn from him, to increase his knowledge. This is true humility, a prophet of the highest determination, a bearer of miracles and a heavenly book, is willing to travel just to learn. He didn't say, "I am a prophet and he is not, so how can I learn from him?" He didn't say, "I am too great to sit as a student before anyone." He asked, "How do I reach him?" Allah gave him the sign. He said, "Take a fish with you and put it in a basket." The basket was a woven vessel used to carry supplies, and the fish was a salted one, meant for food during the journey. Allah said, "In the place where you lose the fish, you will find the righteous servant." What a strange sign! A dead, salted fish would be the guide to Al-Khidr's location. How do you lose a dead fish? And how would that be a sign? That is what we will see. The journey to the junction of the 2 seas. Musa, peace be upon him, set off on the journey. He didn't go alone. He took his young companion, Yusha bin Nun Joshua. Yusha was Musa's servant and close student, a righteous young man who served the prophet and learned from him. This young man would later become a prophet himself after Musa's death, leading the children of Israel and conquering Jerusalem. But at this time, he was a young companion carrying the provisions. Musa took the salted fish, and placed it in the basket as Allah commanded. He told Yusha, "When we lose the fish, inform me immediately." This was the sign. The journey began. Musa and Yusha walked for long days. The road was rough, and the distance was great. They walked until they reached an extraordinary place, a large rock at the meeting point of two seas. This was the junction of the two seas mentioned by Allah. Scholars differed on its exact location. Some said it was the meeting point of the Mediterranean and the Persian Gulf. Others said the Persian Gulf and the Indian Ocean, but what matters is that it was the place designated by Allah. At this rock, Musa and Yusha were utterly exhausted from the long travel, so they sat down to rest. Overcome by fatigue, Musa fell into the deep sleep of an exhausted traveler against the rock, while Yusha sat guarding their belongings, with the fish in the basket beside them. And right there, the miraculous event happened. The fish came back to life, at the base of that rock. There was a spring of water, but it was no ordinary spring. It was the fountain of life. Nothing dead touched its water, except that Allah brought it back to life. A few drops of spray from this spring touched the dead, salted fish in the basket. What happened next? Life surged back into the fish. Yes, a dead, salted fish came alive. It flipped, wriggled out of the basket, and leaped into the sea. Yusha saw all of this with his own eyes. He saw the dead fish move and jump into the water. But he saw something even stranger, the path of the fish in the sea. The water parted where the fish swam, forming a solid tunnel, like path that did not close up. Allah stopped the flow of water in that exact path, so the trace of the fish remained visible. As the Quran says in Surah Al-Kahf, it took its course into the sea, slipping away. Yusha witnessed this miracle, but he did not wake Musa. He thought to himself, "I will tell him when he wakes up. I won't disturb his sleep." Then the unexpected happened. Musa woke up and said to Yusha, "Let's continue our journey." He gathered his things and moved on, and Yusha forgot. He forgot to tell him about the fish. He forgot the single most important sign they were looking for. The Quran records Yusha saying, "And none made me forget it except Satan, lest I should mention it." Satan made him forget for a divine wisdom. Allah wanted them to pass the location and then return, so the meeting would happen in a specific way. So, Musa and Yusha walked on, leaving the rock, the fountain of life, and Al-Khidr behind them. Where is the fish? Musa and Yusha walked for the rest of that day and the entire night. The distance grew longer, and exhaustion took over. But Musa was determined to finish the journey. The next morning, after a long march, Musa felt an intense hunger. The journey had drained him, their food was gone, and his stomach was empty. He turned to Yusha and said, "Bring us our morning meal. We have certainly suffered from this journey of ours much fatigue." In that very fraction of a second, Yusha's memory rushed back completely. He remembered the rock, the spring, the fish moving and jumping, and the miraculous tunnel in the sea. He realized he had forgotten to tell Musa. Looking at Musa with deep regret, he said, "Did you see when we retired to the rock? Indeed, I forgot the fish, and none made me forget it except Satan, and it took its course into the sea amazingly." How did Musa react? Did he get angry at his companion? Did he blame him for forgetting? No. He immediately exclaimed with joy, "That is what we were seeking." The sign had appeared. The place where they lost the fish was the destination. He wasted no time in blame. Understanding this was Allah's decree. The Quran says, "So they returned, retracing their footsteps." Musa and Yusha went back, carefully tracking their footprints in the sand, step by step, returning to the rock. Hunger gnawed at their stomachs, but their thirst for knowledge was far stronger. They reached the rock, the spot where they had slept, the spot where the fish had jumped. Musa looked around, searching for the righteous servant, and saw a sight he had never witnessed in his life. A man covered in a green garment, with one end of the cloth under his head and the other under his feet, lying on his back in total tranquility. But where was he lying? On top of the water. Yes, the man was resting on top of the sea as if it were a solid bed, without sinking. It was as if Allah had commanded the water to carry him. This was Al-Khidr. Musa approached with cautious steps and offered the greeting of peace, as "Salamu alaikum, peace be upon you." Al-Khidr uncovered his face, looked at the man standing before him, and said something peculiar. "Wa alaikum as-salam, and is there peace in my land?" It was a profound question, meaning, how could you bring the greeting of peace to this land whose people do not know peace and are not believers? Then he asked, "Who are you?" Musa replied, "I am Musa." Al-Khidr asked, "Musa of the children of Israel?" Musa replied, "Yes." Al-Khidr knew him by name and identity. He knew he was the great prophet of Israel. He asked, "And what is your business, O Musa? What brought you here?" Musa spoke the profound words that highlighted his immense humility. "May I follow you on the condition that you teach me from what you have been taught of sound judgment," a prophet of the highest caliber says to a man. "Teach me." This is true respect for knowledge. The condition. Al-Khidr looked at Musa for a long time, then told him something critical that we must understand. He said, "O Musa, I possess a type of knowledge that Allah has taught me which you do not know. And you possess a type of knowledge that Allah has taught you which I do not know. Each of us specializes in a different realm of knowledge. You, Musa, have the knowledge of the Sharia, divine law, judgments, and what is halal and haram. I have the knowledge of the inner realities and the hidden wisdom behind events. Your knowledge is not mine, and my knowledge is not yours." Then he issued a clear warning. "Indeed, you will never be able to have patience with me. And how can you have patience for that which you do not encompass in knowledge? How can you stay silent when you see things you don't understand?" Musa insisted on accompanying him, saying, "You will find me, if Allah wills, patient, and I will not disobey you in any order." Al-Khidr agreed, but on one strict condition. He said, "Then if you follow me, do not ask me about anything until I make to you a mention of it. Do not ask me about anything I do, no matter how strange or wrong it seems. Wait until I explain it to you myself." Musa accepted the condition, promising to remain silent and not ask until permitted. Thus began the journey that would completely change our understanding of destiny and divine wisdom, the bird and the sea. Before they even took their first steps, a small but heavily symbolic event occurred. A tiny, weak bird landed on the edge of the water near the rock. It dipped its beak into the sea just once, taking a single drop of water. Al-Khidr saw the bird and what it did, then turned to Musa and said words we should all memorize. He said, "O Musa, my knowledge and your knowledge compared to the knowledge of Allah is like nothing but what this bird has taken from the sea with its beak." Contemplate this metaphor. The knowledge of Musa, the great prophet who spoke to Allah, and the knowledge of Al-Khidr, the servant directly taught by Allah, combined, when compared to the absolute knowledge of Allah, is merely a single drop of water in a bird's beak compared to the vast ocean. It is nothing. No matter how much a human learns, studies, and discovers, they remain unlearned before the infinite knowledge of the Creator. This was the first lesson in humility. Before witnessing anything else, we must understand that we truly know nothing. The first action, the ship. Musa and Al-Khidr set off, walking along the seashore in absolute silence. Yusha bin Nun had returned to his people, as this was a private journey meant only for Musa and Al-Khidr. The sun began to rise higher, and the heat intensified. Musa walked beside Al-Khidr, glancing at him from time to time. What would this man teach him? What wisdom would he reveal? Al-Khidr walked with calm, steady steps without uttering a word, as if he knew the path perfectly. His face was serene, showing no signs of fatigue or worry. They walked for hours along the sand, with the sea on their right and the land on their left. Musa began to feel tired, but he did not complain. He came to learn and would remain patient. After a long walk, a ship appeared on the distant horizon, a simple wooden vessel sailing parallel to the coast. Al-Khidr saw the ship, stopped, and signaled to it. The crew noticed the two men on the shore, one gesturing for a ride. They brought the ship as close to the coast as possible, and one of the sailors called out, "Who are you, and where do you wish to go?" Al-Khidr did not answer. He just stood waiting. The sailors looked closely at him, and their expressions shifted. One said to his companions, "This is the righteous servant of Allah. I recognize him. He is a blessed man." Another said, "Yes, it is him. My father told me about him. He is a man of great goodness." Immediately they called out, "Come, O servant of Allah, board with whoever is with you." They asked for no fare and refused to negotiate a price. They decided to carry him for free out of respect. Musa looked at Al-Khidr in astonishment. The people here knew him and honored him. Al-Khidr waded into the water, boarded the ship, and Musa followed him. The crew welcomed them warmly, seating them in a comfortable spot away from the sun, offering them fresh water and dates. It was immense generosity from simple, poor people. Musa sat observing the ship. It was a small, humble boat. Its wooden planks were old but sturdy, and its sail was patched up in many places, showing it had been repaired numerous times. The ropes were worn out from heavy use, yet they still functioned. This was not a ship belonging to the wealthy or grand merchants. It belonged to poor working men, fishermen who transported people and goods to make a living. Musa looked at their faces, tired yet kind faces of men who spent their lives at sea. Their skins were weathered by the sun, their hair whitened by the salt, and their hands calloused from hard labor, but their hearts were soft. This simple ship was everything they owned in the world. Through it, they worked, earned their livelihood, and fed their families. Without it, they would have nothing, reduced to absolute poverty. Musa felt deep gratitude and respect for these kind people who carried them without demanding anything in return. The ship sailed smoothly, gently rocked by the waves. Musa began to relax after the long march. He breathed deeply, inhaling the salty sea air, and looked at Al-Khidr. The man sat silently, gazing into the far horizon. What did he see? What was he thinking? Musa did not know, but he trusted that this man possessed great knowledge. The sailors worked systematically, one repairing a rope, another directing the sail, talking quietly and laughing occasionally. It was a peaceful atmosphere, an ordinary sea voyage with nothing to cause anxiety. Then suddenly, without any warning, something shocking happened. Al-Khidr stood up and walked toward the side of the ship. Musa watched closely, unable to understand where he was going. Al-Khidr reached one of the main wooden planks forming the side of the hull. He picked up an adze, a sharp, heavy woodworking tool that was lying nearby. Musa watched in growing bewilderment. What is he going to do with that tool? Al-Khidr raised the adze and struck the wooden plank with immense force. A loud, echoing blow filled the ship. The sailors heard the sound and turned in shock. What is happening? Musa jumped from his seat. What is this man doing? Al-Khidr did not stop. He struck a second time, cracking the wood, then a third and a fourth time, completely dislodging the plank. A gaping hole was made in the side of the ship. Water began to rush into the vessel, first a little, then more and more. The sailors screamed in terror. Our ship is sinking. They rushed toward the leak, trying to plug it with anything they could find. Chaos, shouting, and panic took over the ship. Musa stood frozen, unable to believe his eyes. This man, the righteous servant, had intentionally damaged the ship of the poor people who had treated them with nothing but kindness. These good people had carried them for free and shared their food. Yet this man was destroying their sole source of survival right before them. Musa could not remain silent. He forgot the condition, forgot his promise, and shouted in anger and shock. "Have you broken it to drown its people? You have certainly done a grave thing." Al-Khidr stopped, slowly lowered the tool, turned to Musa, and looked at him with perfectly calm eyes. There was no anger or agitation on his face. He spoke with absolute serenity. "Did I not say that with me you would never be able to have patience?" Those few words struck Musa like a thunderbolt. He remembered. He remembered the condition Al-Khidr had set and the solemn vow he had made. "Do not ask me about anything until I mention it to you." He had promised not to object, yet he broke his word at the very first test. He felt immense shame. How did he forget so quickly? Lowering his head, he spoke apologetically. "Do not blame me for what I forgot, and do not cover me with hardship in my matter. I genuinely forgot. I did not mean to break the condition. Forgive me, and do not make this journey too difficult for me." Musa's first objection was indeed out of pure forgetfulness. The shock of seeing a righteous man damage a poor person's ship was too much for his sense of justice to bear, so he spoke before he could think. But Al-Khidr had warned him from the start. Al-Khidr accepted Musa's apology and gave him another chance. The ship reached the shore after the sailors managed to temporarily plug the leak, and Al-Khidr and Musa disembarked and walked away. Musa walked, his mind racing with questions. Why did he do that? What is the wisdom? But he had to remain silent and wait. He had no idea that what he was about to witness next would be far more shocking, difficult, and severe. The second action, the boy. They left the ship and walked along the coast in a heavy, tense silence. Musa was still preoccupied with the image of the damaged ship and the panicked sailors. He tried to find an explanation, but failed. What wisdom could there be in harming kind people? Yet, he reminded himself that this man possessed divinely inspired knowledge, and there must be a hidden purpose. They walked for a long time on the sand as the sun began to set. Al-Khidr maintained his steady, calm pace, never speaking or looking back, simply moving forward. Musa followed silently, observing and waiting to understand. After some time, they reached a small coastal village with modest houses and people moving about. At the outskirts of the village, near the beach, there was a beautiful scene. A group of young boys, perhaps around 10 years old or younger, running around on the sand, laughing loudly. Their innocent childhood voices filled the air as they raced, played games, and threw stones into the water. Their faces were bright with joy, free of care and worry. Musa looked at them and smiled. It was a heartwarming sight after everything he had been through. But Al-Khidr did not stop to admire the scene. He looked at the children with a completely different gaze. A look containing something Musa could not comprehend. His eyes scanned the boys one by one, as if searching for a specific person, until his gaze locked onto one particular boy. To Musa, this boy looked exactly like the others. He was playing, laughing, and running just like his friends, possessing an innocent face and a wide smile. But Al-Khidr saw him with different eyes. He saw what Musa could not see. Suddenly, Al-Khidr began walking directly toward the children. Musa noticed the determination in his steps and followed closely. Al-Khidr approached the boys, passing by several of them without a glance, his eyes fixed entirely on that one child. Busy playing, the boy didn't notice the strange man approaching. Al-Khidr closed the distance 5 steps, for 3, 2, until he stood right over him. The boy raised his head, looking up at the tall man with curious, innocent eyes, completely unafraid. Then, Al-Khidr reached out, grabbed the boy's head with a powerful grip, and executed him on the spot. He killed the boy. The small body fell onto the sand, and blood poured out. The other children screamed in absolute horror and scattered, crying and fleeing in panic. Musa stood frozen, paralyzed with shock. Did he really just witness that? Did this righteous man just murder a child right before his eyes? A little boy who was playing and laughing just a second ago was now dead on the ground, having committed no sin or crime. Musa felt an explosive rage erupt within him, a fury unlike anything he had felt before. This time, staying silent was absolutely impossible. The ship was material property that could be repaired, but this was a human soul, an innocent child who could never be brought back. Musa screamed with all his might. Have you killed a pure soul for other than a soul? A pure, innocent, sinless soul. What was his crime? He didn't kill anyone to deserve retribution, nor did he spread corruption on earth to warrant execution.
He was just a child playing.
You have certainly done a horrible thing. This is far worse than what you did to the ship. Musa's voice trembled with rage, shock, and grief, tears of anger filling his eyes. How could such an atrocity happen right in front of him while he stood powerless? Al-Khidr turned to Musa with the exact same serene expression, showing no regret, fear, or hesitation. He spoke calmly. Did I not say to you that with me you would never be able to have patience? Musa heard the words and noticed a crucial difference. The first time at the ship, Al-Khidr said, "Did I not say that?" But this time he added a word. "Did I not say to you that?" He personalized the warning, as if saying, "I warned you specifically, O Musa, in a direct manner, that you would not be able to handle this. Yet you insisted, and now you have broken the condition for the second time." As the Prophet Muhammad noted, this second instance was far more severe than the first. Musa stood in silence for a long time. The rage was still boiling inside him, but a profound sense of shame began to emerge. He had promised not to ask, and he had broken his vow twice. The first time he claimed forgetfulness, but this time he had objected deliberately because he couldn't bear what he saw. Musa looked at Al-Khidr and delivered a final ultimatum to himself. If I should ask you about anything after this, then do not keep me as a companion. You have obtained from me an excuse. If I object a third time, leave me. You have every right to end our companionship. This was a new condition Musa placed upon himself, one last chance. The burning question in his heart remained. Why did you kill the boy? But he forced himself to stay silent and wait for the explanation. The third action, the greedy village. Musa and Al-Khidr continued their march in a heavy, profound silence. The image of the young boy on the sand haunted Musa's mind. What could possibly justify the killing of a child? He suppressed his burning questions to protect his final opportunity to learn. They walked until darkness began to fall, and absolute exhaustion and hunger took over. They hadn't eaten or rested properly since the journey began. On the horizon, a village appeared with lights and smoke rising from the houses, a sure sign of cooking and food. Musa felt a glimmer of hope that they would finally find food and shelter. They entered the village, walking through its narrow streets past residents returning from work and women carrying water pitchers. Musa and Al-Khidr approached one of the houses and knocked on the door. A man opened it and scrutinized them. Musa said, "We are hungry travelers. Would you feed us?" In the culture of those lands, honoring a guest is a sacred, non-negotiable duty. A traveler must be fed, given drink, and sheltered, even if he is a total stranger. Turning away a hungry guest was considered a matter of great shame. But this villager did the unimaginable. He stared at them with a cold expression, bluntly said no, and slammed the door in their faces. Musa looked at Al-Khidr in shock. But Al-Khidr's expression didn't change. They decided to try another house. They knocked, a woman answered, and Musa repeated their request. She gave them the same cold look, said, "We have nothing," and shut the door. They tried a third, a fourth, a fifth, and a seventh house, and every single door was shut in their faces. Nobody would give them a single morsel of bread. They were an incredibly greedy, cold-hearted people who utterly rejected the duty of hospitality. The Quran explicitly describes their stance. They refused to offer them hospitality. Musa felt insulted, deeply hungry, and exhausted. These villagers were the worst people he had ever encountered. The poor sailors on the ship had treated them with boundless generosity without being asked, while these relatively well-off villagers refused to help starving travelers. Al-Khidr showed no signs of annoyance, acting as if he expected this outcome. They left the village just as they had entered, hungry and exhausted. The wall. As they were leaving the outskirts of the village, Al-Khidr noticed something. There was an old wall that was on the verge of collapsing, leaning heavily toward the ground, its stones loosening and its mortar crumbling. Al-Khidr stopped at this dilapidated wall and stared at it for a long time. Musa stood waiting, wondering what Al-Khidr saw in a broken wall. Then, Al-Khidr did something completely unexpected. He began to rebuild and repair the wall. He started lifting the heavy stones back into place, securing them, filling the gaps with mud, and straightening the structure so it would stand firm. It was strenuous, exhausting manual labor that required immense effort, yet Al-Khidr worked in focused silence. Musa watched, entirely bewildered. These miserable, greedy people refused to give them a single crust of bread, insulted them, and shut their doors on them. Yet here Al-Khidr was performing hard labor to fix their property for free. He was exhausting himself for people who deserved absolutely nothing. What logic was this? Al-Khidr continued until the walls stood perfectly straight, solid, and completely restored. It was a masterful piece of masonry that deserved a significant wage, yet Al-Khidr asked for nothing. Musa looked at the restored wall, then at Al-Khidr, and then back at the village that had humiliated them. This time, he didn't scream or get angry. He had learned from his previous mistakes. Instead, he spoke with gentle, logical bewilderment, saying, "If you wished, you could have taken for it a payment. It was a perfectly reasonable point. You could have demanded a wage for this exhausting work, and we could have used that money to buy food to satisfy our hunger. We have been starving for hours, and instead of leaving, you serve them for free." Musa's comment wasn't an angry outburst, but it was a question nonetheless, and asking questions was the one thing he promised not to do. Al-Khidr turned to him, looked him in the eyes, and uttered the words that brought their journey to an end. "This is the parting between me and you." It was over. Musa had questioned him 3 times, breaking the condition thrice, and the companionship was at an end. Musa felt a profound sense of disappointment. He had traveled so far to learn, and now the journey was ending before he could comprehend anything. He was going home with 3 baffling mysteries and no answers. But Al-Khidr did not leave him in darkness. He said, "I will inform you of the interpretation of that about which you could not have patience. Before we part ways, I will explain everything to you. You will understand why I broke the ship, why I killed the boy, and why I rebuilt the wall. Everything has a profound divine wisdom, and you will know it right now." Musa felt an immediate sense of relief. They sat down on the ground, and Al-Khidr began to explain. The explanations, the reality of the ship. Al-Khidr began to speak, and Musa listened with every fiber of his being. Al-Khidr said, As for the ship, it belonged to poor people working at sea. It was their only possession in this world, the sole means by which they fished, worked, and fed their children. So I intended to cause a defect in it. I wanted to create a flaw in it to reduce its apparent value.
Why?
Because there was after them a king who seized every ship by force. Here lay the hidden wisdom. There was a tyrannical king ruling those regions who had a brutal practice. Whenever a sound, flawless, perfectly working ship passed by, his soldiers would confiscate it by force. He would steal it from its owners without any right or compensation, leaving them with nothing. Allah had revealed to Al-Khidr what was about to happen. He knew the tyrant soldiers were on their way to inspect the vessels, and that this flawless ship would catch their eye and be stolen. So what did he do? He intentionally damaged it.
He made a hole in it.
When the king's soldiers arrived to inspect the boats, they saw the broken plank and the water leak. They deemed it defective and useless, saying, "We don't want this damaged boat," and moved on. The damaged ship was saved from the tyrant king. After the danger passed, the poor fishermen easily repaired the hole with a single plank of wood, and they kept their ship and their livelihood. Had the ship been perfect, it would have been lost forever. The act that appeared to be pure harm was actually a supreme act of salvation and mercy. The human mind only sees the immediate surface, a ship being damaged, which looks bad. But Allah knows the broader reality. The damage was the very thing that saved them. The reality of the boy. Then came the explanation for the most difficult question. What about the boy? How could killing a child contain any wisdom? Al-Khidr said, and as for the boy, his parents were believers. The boy had a mother and a father who were deeply righteous, pious believers who loved and obeyed Allah. This child was growing up in a home filled with faith, but Allah knows the absolute future. He knew what this boy would become if he grew up, and we feared that he would overburden them by transgression and disbelief. If this child were to reach adulthood, his core nature would twist. He would become a brutal, rebellious disbeliever. The parents loved their son intensely, which is the natural instinct Allah placed in parents. Because of their immense love for him, as he grew into a tyrannical disbeliever, they would slowly compromise their own faith out of blind affection for him. They would tolerate his wickedness, follow his corrupt ideas, and eventually abandon their religion just to please him. Their love for their child would lead them to eternal ruin and disbelief. Therefore, the divine decree was issued. So we intended that their Lord should substitute for them one better than him in purity and closer to mercy. Allah would take this child away before he could commit sins, ensuring the boy entered paradise as an innocent child, and saving the parents' faith. Furthermore, Allah would bless the righteous parents with another child, a child far purer, more righteous, and deeply dutiful to them. The death that appeared to be a tragedy was actually an act of ultimate mercy. It saved the parents from hellfire and preserved their salvation. Some narrations mention that Allah replaced the boy with a daughter who grew up to marry a prophet and gave birth to a prophet, instead of a rebellious son who would destroy his family. A lineage of prophets came forth. This is divine wisdom. Humans judge based on the tragic surface, while Allah judges based on the ultimate, beautiful reality of the future, the reality of the wall. Finally, Al-Khidr explained the mystery of the wall. He said, "And as for the wall, it belonged to 2 orphan boys in the city, and there was beneath it a treasure for them." The broken wall he repaired did not belong to the greedy villagers. It belonged to 2 helpless young orphans living in that town. Hidden directly beneath that collapsing wall was a massive treasure of gold and wealth left for them. Their father, before his death, had buried this treasure deep under the wall to secure their future when they grew up. If the wall had fallen down, the treasure would have been exposed to the entire village. Given how greedy and corrupt the villagers were, refusing to even feed travelers, they would have undoubtedly stolen the gold from the helpless orphans. So, why did Al Khidr a parrot. He built the wall to keep the treasure hidden until the orphans reached maturity and strength, allowing them to dig up their father's legacy with their own hands, safe from theft. But why did Allah orchestrate this elaborate plan for two random orphans? The answer is in the verse, "And their father had been righteous." This is a monumental lesson. Their father was a deeply righteous man. He had died years ago, but his righteousness did not die with him. The piety of the father protected his children long after he was gone. Allah sent Al-Khidr, an elite servant, to perform hard labor in a hostile village, simply because the orphan's deceased father was a good man. Your personal righteousness is the greatest insurance policy you can leave for your children. Allah will protect them because of you, even when you are no longer around. And I did it not of my own accord. After explaining the three events, Al-Khidr delivered a definitive statement. And I did it not of my own accord. I did not decide to do these things based on my own human intellect or desires. I didn't choose to damage the ship, kill the boy, or build the wall on a whim. I did it by the direct command and revelation of Allah. He commanded me, and I simply executed His will. That is the interpretation of that about which you could not have patience. Now, Musa finally understood everything. Every act that looked evil was actually good. Every decision that looked unjust was absolute justice. Every move that looked insane was pure wisdom. This brings us to a major scholarly debate. Was Al-Khidr a prophet or just a righteous saint? Wali? This is a critical question because taking a human life is an immense matter that is completely forbidden unless authorized by divine law. If Al-Khidr is just a saint, how could he be permitted to kill the boy? The majority of Islamic scholars conclude that Al-Khidr was indeed a prophet. The primary proof is his own statement, "And I did it not of my own accord." This means he acted under direct divine command through revelation. Why? And direct revelation is exclusive to prophets. However, his prophethood was different from Musa's. Musa was a prophet of the Sharia, law, and open commandments, while Al-Khidr was a prophet tasked with executing the hidden decrees of destiny. Each had a distinct role and a unique domain of knowledge. The universal lessons of the journey. What do we take away from this epic journey? 1. Humility in the pursuit of knowledge. Musa, a major prophet, traveled for days and endured great fatigue just to learn from another man. He didn't let his high status get in the way of learning. No matter how educated or successful you become, always remember that someone knows what you do not. Stay humble and keep learning. 2. Never judge what you do not understand. Musa judged the events based on surface logic and saw them as evil, criminal, or foolish. Yet, the hidden reality proved they were acts of salvation, mercy, and protection. Think about your own life. How many times has something happened to you that you thought was a terrible tragedy, only to discover later it was the greatest blessing in disguise? A sickness that cancels a trip might save you from a fatal accident. Losing a job might open the door to a far better career. Never despair over Allah's decrees, because you cannot see the full picture. 3. Absolute trust in Allah's wisdom. The core of the entire story is wrapped up in the famous verse. Perhaps you hate a thing and it is good for you, and perhaps you love a thing and it is bad for you. And Allah knows, while you know not. True peace comes when you surrender to Allah's decree, fully confident that His choices are always best, even when they break your heart or defy your logic. 4. The righteousness of parents protects the children. The orphan's treasure was saved simply because their father had been righteous. If you want your children to be watched over and protected when you are gone, focus on being a righteous, honest, and God-fearing person today. Your piety acts as a shield over your lineage. 5. Knowledge is an endless ocean. Our collective human knowledge compared to Allah's knowledge is like a single drop of water on a bird's beak compared to the entire ocean. Never become arrogant with your intellect. Thank you so much for watching Dodi Drama. I truly hope you enjoyed this astonishing story and found peace in its lessons. Don't forget to join our big family right now. Hit that subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, and stay tuned as we continue to explore this enchanting, magical world together. See you in the next video.